It starts with the intention to know you're there to sell. And so many people, like Dave even said this to me. He says, yeah, I could probably use a little bit, because he's like, I kind of like get up there and I think, well, if they buy, they buy, they don't, like, that's not me. I wake up hunting, if that makes sense. Like, I smell the credit cards in the room, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm doing, right? I'm very, very clear. Now, no, of course, you have to win the audience over. It has to make sense. You got to provide value. If you stand up there and just go through a slide deck just to pitch something, you're not going to be successful at that. So the art of it is engaging the audience to get them to a place where they are excited to buy. That's when you know you've done it right. When they are enthusiastic, when they are excited to buy, right? So if they feel like they need a shower after your presentation, not good, right? That is not what we're talking about. We are talking about putting together a presentation that influences, that persuades, that educates, and it does it in a way where the natural conclusion is they want to talk to you about helping them with that. Does that make sense? And if you get up on that stage and your intention is, well, I want the audience to love me, or I want them to like me, or I feel weird about asking people for money, you're dead. You're not going to make it, right? You've got to. I don't want applause at the end of that presentation, because if you're filling out an order form, you can't applaud. So I don't want applause. That's not a good thing, right? Because I want people like rushing to the back. So that's extremely important to understand. So we're going to talk about structure. Okay, there is a structure to this. There is a formula to this. And I'm going to walk you through this. Please ask lots of questions. If you guys have questions, the mics are here, because I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. So you have to make sure you get clarity on anything I might be overlooking. Because the challenge that I have is this is so intuitive to me. Sometimes I forget what you might not know because it's so obvious and intuitive. That's the problem with knowledge. You start to get, you forget kind of, what the heck am I doing? You're just doing it. All right. So here's where it all starts. Besides saying with the intention to sell, it starts with you've got to create your offer. Okay? What I mean by your offer is what are you going to tell them to do at the end of the presentation, right? And this is super critical. Everything has to be designed around that close and getting the right people to stand up and want to buy from you, all right? So, for example, if you are, if let's say, for example, and I'll show you an example at the end of this, right? At the end of this two-part presentation. If I want everybody to sign up for an assessment to do a galactic scan, Bruce, see, I'm making you famous for no good reason, okay? He's not paying me extra for this. We love Bruce. And I think he's actually going to come up here and talk to you about this, so this is going to be good. But so if that is my intention, then I have to do everything in that presentation to set up that that's the thing you need to do. Going back to the stories I tell, the information that I share, right? So in my presentation, I do not want to share anything that doesn't help support the close at the end, whether the close is going to be pull out your credit card and buy something, or it is to sign up for a free galactic scan, right? So I'll show you an example at the end of this talk, and I am revising the cybersecurity PowerPoint, but I do want you guys to understand that you've got to understand structure, because I can't, if I give you a canned presentation, I can give you the format, right? But all of you have stories and backgrounds and information that I can't make that. That's what makes your presentation really come alive, is the stories you tell and the way you tell it. And you've got to sort of connect with that audience, right? So if I'm going to sell that galactic scan, that I need to make sure absolutely 100% everything I say, every story, every example is leading towards that, okay? Now, there are 3 categories of offers. So when you're thinking about an offer, there's 3. There's free information, come to the back and get my book or something. A free appointment, which is kind of like a galactic scan, if you will, like a consultation, or you could actually be a paid service. I know Charles Henson has very successfully sold from stage, so he has stood on stage and told people, pay me for an assessment, and he's been able to do that very successfully because Charles has been doing this a little bit more. Anybody else besides Charles been able to do that? I'm just curious. Show of hands. Princess, yes. Joanna, good. Okay. So yeah, Scott, yeah. So good. So, that is possible. And depending on the situation, the amount of time, the people in the audience, my agreement with the host, we're going to make a decision on which one of these three, because I use all of these. I'm not here to tell you one is better than the others. You have to choose the appropriate one for the appropriate audience. So let me talk about that a little bit. So free information, this is any type of content, and I'm saying digital or physical, because if you're on a webinar, you might want to offer it digitally or physical, like a free report, if you have a book. We have, for example, we have our shock and awe box that we give out at consultations with a little bit modified. So if I go and speak on stage and they tell me, Robin, you're not allowed to sell, I say, great, is it okay if I make a free gift available to the audience? They're always okay with that, sure. It's like, okay, so I've got this, and I show them, I say, I've got this box, and it's marketing materials, there's some free reports, there's postcards in it with QR codes where they can go download free materials, and we give that away for free, and they're okay with that. So any kind of free information, and if you're going to give away free information, and when you should use this offer is if you lack sufficient experience to really sell from stage, start with giving away free information, because it'll get you in the habit of making an offer and driving people to the back. If the host is saying you cannot sell here, because some of them after a while, people were sort of on to me. So it's kind of interesting. So ASCII in the beginning, we're like, yeah, sure, just go ahead and speak, no problem. And then I think Jerry started seeing the dollars coming through. And so he never asked for a share, a split. And, but I think, after a while, what I was doing, I was helping bring people. So once I started speaking in a lot of stages, I started building a list. And so when I would go to ASCII, I would promote being at that event, literally with direct mail, email, and I would get people to show up. So there was an advantage then. But anyway, at some point, the host might say to you, hey, you can't sell. Okay, fine. So that would be appropriate for free information. If you want maximum lead flow, so let's say you're like me, you have 12 hungry SDRs back at the office who all need leads and you need to feed them. You might just give them, might do free information just to drive them to, for a lead for them to book an appointment. If you don't have sufficient time to sell, so if you are trying to make a sale, I need at least 75 minutes, ideally 90. Really, I need 90 to make that happen. If I get cut short, it makes it more difficult. So like if you're doing a presentation that's like 30 minutes, it's going to be, I'll never say impossible, but it's going to be really hard to get somebody to pull out a credit card, a cold audience to pull out a credit card in 30 minutes and buy something. It's not impossible, but it's going to be a lot tougher. So if you have less than 60 minutes, or when you're talking to a cold audience of prospects, particularly on a webinar versus a physical room. So if I am on a webinar of cold suspects, like I just did a webinar with Sonic Wall, for example. And I don't know those people. They organized it. It was their list. I had 60 minutes, so I wasn't going to sell, so I just did lead gen. I said, hey, go to this website, download this stuff, right? That's a cold audience. Now, if I'm selling at boot camp to my customers, I can pitch and close in like 30 minutes because I have a warm audience of customers. You see the difference? The other thing would be if you're in front of an audience that is used to buying that way. So like I mentioned GKIC and how I sold there, that whole tribe in there, they bought just because that's the way they sell, and so they're very comfortable with that. It was a little different scenario, all right? So that's free information. Now, free information will deliver the highest number of leads, all things being equal, because it's free information. Go to the back, pick it up, go here, download it, whatever, right? There's not a lot of barrier to entry, if you will. Now, the thing is that whatever the information is, it still has to be of high value and great interest to the audience you're speaking to. And the acid test is, could you, if you had more time and skill, could you sell it? And if you could sell it, then you're on the right track, right? Even though it's free, it still needs to be sold. So you still have to build value. You don't just go, at the end, well, I've got copies of my book, hacked in the back, and, go pick up your free copy, the end, walk off. That's not selling, right? You got to say, in chapter 2, there is a checklist of questions that you should go back. There's 5 questions, and you should ask your IT company today. And if they can't nail all 5, I can tell you right now, without poking around in your network, I can tell you I guarantee that you are at risk for a serious cyber attack. And that's going to be that's chapter 2, page 18 in the book, 5 questions. I dare any of you to go back, ask that to your IT department, have them say yes to all 5. And if you can do that, I'll make a good-natured bet. I'll bet $100 that nobody can go back. So go back, get your free copy of that book. You see what I mean? Now the curiosity, now they're going to go get that. You see, that's the way you're going to have to sell free information, all right? It could be a book, a checklist, a report, data. The format in the media is the least important. So people ask me, well, should it be a book or should it be a free report? Or should it be, should it be a postcard with a QR code where they can download? The media is not as important as the title and how well you sell the information, okay? So however it makes sense is fine. A physical room, a physical product will do better. And in a digital room, an instant download is going to be a better free information offer. So if I'm on a webinar and I say, hey, if you can't, like one of the things you'll see on a webinar I do to lead generate, well, one, as soon as they register, if possible, right there, try and get them to book an appointment. And roughly somewhere between 10 and 15% will book an appointment right there without even getting on the webinar. And then on the webinar, when I'm starting off, I'll say, hey, I know some of you might be a little time crunched, so if you are unable to stay for the entire presentation, go to this site. There's free information. I sell the free. I sell it a little bit. Here's the URL. And then I carry on with the presentation, and then I repeat that offer at the end, right? So on a webinar, digital, think digital, and instant download, and I would still physically mail them something. In a physical room like this, physical product will help you. Because if I stand here and I say, well, in the back is this shock and awe box, and inside, I open the box and there's this, and I'm unpacking it, and I'm selling each of the items in this little shock and awe, but they're in the back, and we only we only had 12 available for everybody in the room, so the first 12 would get their butts back there, and then that's when you create this little bit of a stampede, right? So physical in a physical room. And you can offer, here's another little tip, you can offer the free information, and then when they get back to the booth, flip them into an appointment. So we do that sometimes. We'll offer the mini shock and awe. You walk up to our booth, and, Angel's there, and she says, okay, this is great. Well, let me get your information. Da, da, da. She's asking you a couple questions. She said, well, it would be really beneficial. This information is great, but what would be really beneficial if I book a one-on-one consultation with one of our senior advisors, and they could go through your situation and your budget and your challenges and your problems, and we could go through that. It's no cost, and it will create a customized marketing. We'll give you our marketing roadmap, and you'll know exactly what, would you like to book that? And we'll convert a very high percentage of those people. So the free information drives them back to the booth. And then at the booth, we're converting them to an appointment. Does that make sense? So you can sort of do that as well. Now, free appointment. Oh, yes, yeah.
So it sounds like for the physical giveaway that it's going to be important for you to actually have a booth or somewhere for them to come back to.
Yes.
Okay.
You're going to have it. If I'm selling, I want that booth in the way of traffic as they're leaving, so they literally have to walk past it to get out of the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have like I just spoke at Pittsburgh InfoSec Day last month, and there was I wasn't going to have a table or anything like that, so I did at the end, if you'd like this free report, just email info@ with this subject. I forgot to tell Sarah, so she was like, holy shit, what was this coming in? But so that was and I was thinking to myself, if I'm giving something away, I'm not gonna be able to capture any leads, because I'm not getting someone's business card for this handout kind of a thing, and I don't have a booth. So that makes more sense.
Yeah, well, so if I'm giving away free information, I'm still lead capturing at the back. Either it's a badge scan. Sometimes they have Cvent. We'll have a badge scan. If they don't have that, then you're asking them, can you fill out this this form, and then I'm giving you the information. So I'm not just handing it to you. I am lead generating and getting that information. Okay. Now, the other mistake that you made is not telling the people back at the office. I know you know that, but it brings up a bigger mistake that everybody makes, is that you're like the underwear gnomes, right? And I use this a lot. It's like South Park, Google it, right? It's like step 1, steal underwear. Step 2, step 3, make money, right? And there's something in the middle that's missing, and that's really, really, really important. So you have to, before you do this, you want to have a process for when they get the next step, what are you doing there? And on the next step, what are you doing there? And on the next step, what are you doing there? Because if you don't connect those dots, I guarantee you're losing a lot of money.
100%,
and I know you know that.
100%.
And I'm not picking on you. It's everybody makes that mistake. I see it a lot. They'll even come to me and say, well, I did a webinar and it went great because I had 300 people on. Now what do I do? Well, when was the webinar? 3 weeks ago. I'm like, well, now you do nothing, dum-dum.
Yeah.
I said, you go back in time. You have a time capsule? You can go back and fix your stupidity because you should have done, you should have closed them while you were there.
Yeah.
Now we got to do all this follow-up and it's not going to be as good.
And
So.
I want to make this comment too, because I don't know how many people like speak a lot or do webinars or seminars a lot, and I do them a lot. You said the first thing you do is figure out your offer. The first thing you do. That's the last thing I do. I get to the end of this like brilliant thing and I'm like, what should I offer? I love that so much because it really, but from doing this so often, that's just really going to force me to actually be so much more strategic about it. If that's the one thing that you take away, please take that away. Start with that and then build everything backwards.
And that's the thing I learned as a direct response copywriter is you start with the offer. You start with the order form. And then you backtrack into, like, that's really how great selling is done. You actually figure out what will people buy, then you go design the thing. Right? That's the right way. What everybody does is they design a thing and then they wander around shoeless, clueless, looking around for who's going to buy this thing. You want to find who's the buyer, what do they want, what's their pain, what's their angst, what are they worried about, where do they have money, where do they have unresolved problems, and what will they buy without thinking about, whoa, can I do this? What is it going to cost? All this thing. What will they buy? And then go design that thing and you'll sell. It's the same way that Disney designs their theme parks. The reason Disney does so well is they start with what would our customers absolutely love? And they design that first. Then they back into, okay, what is it going to cost and how do we do that? And then they build it, right? Because everybody starts with the budget and the thing, and then they try to figure out how to sell this thing that they have. So it's the same with a presentation. You always want to start with the offer. Like when I'm sitting in front of a customer, what is something that I could say, promise, legit promise, not bullshit, but what I could, if I could say this is the unique selling proposition I teach. If I could sit in front of a prospect and promise to do A, B, C, or just A, what would that be that would make it nearly impossible to compete with me? And when you start with that reference, it's not easy. The answer is not easy, and it's not certainly, I mean, maybe the answer is easy, but then going building the thing is not easy. But that's the right way to start.